I know what you're thinking. You are thinking this is a 10. It's generational. Everyone is saying it's good. You have Moist Critical to Maddie Plays to everyone on Twitter loving and embracing this game as perfection. Well, I dropped it, and it's because the game not only dragged its plot, it had so many bad cliches into one, I could not continue on. And please, if you do not agree, I understand. It's just my opinion at the end of the day. All in all, this is a fun game, a good game somewhat, but the inspirations it took from a game like Final Fantasy X does not stick its landing and does not improve throughout its twist. I don't even know where to start. This game has fun combat. It mixes many of the great elements of RPGs before it. The AP system is cool, the different builds are good, but as you advance through Act 1, you start to see the real picture in the gameplay, and what it draws is quite weak. On Act 1, whether you play on normal or expert, it doesn't matter. You will be hitting the limits of the RPG aspect of the combat. That is to say, consistently hitting the damage cap of 9,999 almost every turn. This is without any real min-maxing. No dumping every point in one stat or putting all the pictos on one character or whatever, just playing as intended. As far as I could see, this on its own wouldn't be an issue, but the combat has basically no strategy or true variety, and aside from a handful of essentially mandatory interactions, burned for some reason in the occasional gimmick boss that requires break to deal damage, there's practically zero synergy or party composition to speak of, and it just consists of spamming your strongest move over and over, and since you're hitting the damage cap anyway, there's nothing else to do. The only thing that actually matters in this game is parrying, and the parry system is kind of lackluster. The Unreal graphics, which while technically high fidelity, were kinda, cluttered and noisy throughout the whole game. It means that parrying projectile feels like a guessing game, and many of the animations are wildly unpredictable. This is intentional to add difficulty, of course, but all it means is you need to learn the pattern rather than actually being able to respond to what's in front of you. Healing is pointless, defense is pointless, since on expert or even normal against most enemies down the line, you're dying in a couple whiffed attacks anyways. So for bosses, you just need to die a few times to see all their attacks, of which there have never been more than I think 4 to 6 for a whole boss. And then hope that you execute all the parries enough times for their health to chunk down. I've tried respecting everything into defense and HP to see if it helps with survivability, and it just means less damage output equals longer battles and more chances to make mistakes when pairing, so it's not worth it to build something so useless. The systems seem very intricate at first, until you get familiar with things, and then it falls apart. I feel like dodging and parrying aren't balanced properly. Why do they both entirely negate damage instead of having any type of trade-off? Make it so not all attacks are dodgeable, and parries can still give a counterattack, but you take a portion of the damage. Parry invincibility could have been an endgame picto, which would have made more sense, I think. As it stands, defensive builds are pointless, and I think it's pretty amateur game design when you choose your own attribute growth, but 2 out of 5 attributes are an active waste of your points. The actual RPG elements of the game aren't really what you actually play. They matter so little compared to the pattern recognition gameplay of the parry dodge system. The more you progress through this game, the more the game wants you to rely on the dodge and parry mechanic completely. You're not making some big tank build where you can soak up hits all day and still live through healing, because that's not viable at all, like an actual turn-based game. You will be doing a lot more and wasting a lot of time by building up some tank build, because later on most bosses to mini bosses and even quite a few regular enemies are designed around the parry dodge system. Go ahead, get to Act 3, get to the end nearing of Act 2 and try to survive 3 hits to 4 to 5 hit combos from these bosses. It's a waste of breath. It's not possible, it's not worth it unless you make a sacrificial character and waste an attacking turn when you can just make every character a critical might agility bomb. Let's also not forget you are capped at 9,999 damage until Act 3 for some weird reason. The art style and music in Expedition 33 is a masterclass in elegance through art and music. This game just doesn't just look and sound good, it radiates elegance from every pixel and note. From the first moment the game sweeps you into the painter's dream, where the brushstrokes of French artistic heritage breathe life into every frame, the visuals feel like you've stepped into a living oil painting. The architecture echoes the old Paris or the movie Amelia. Watch it if you have not. Characters and enemies are visually poetic, equal parts elegant and haunting, melding fantasy with a subtle, distinctly European melancholy. It's artistry that feels handcrafted, not just design. Complementing the visual greatness is the soundtrack that's just as refined. Seriously, the musical score flows with a dynamic grace. Gorgeous classical compositions with lush strings and pianos set the tone during the exploration and cutscenes, grounding you in the game's emotional undercurrent. Then during combat, it blossoms into powerful, upbeat orchestral pieces that intensify the action without losing that refined edge. The music doesn't just play behind the game, it elevates it, becoming a part of the narrative flow and emotional rhythm. This is Expedition 33's strongest layer, the music. The instrumentals are lovely, and the angelic opera singer in the background may be a bit too overused in cutscenes, but overall, the soundtrack is some of the best I heard in modern day. Remember, this is an RPG and or JRPG, and in any RPG or JRPG's core is a good story and party. And I mean, do we need to list them? Let's list the problems here. It's all just a dream. The gods are the entire reason the dream went to shit, and no conflict would have occurred if said gods weren't morons. Our actual main character is secretly one of the gods, but we need to waste time on vague bullshit drama and other characters behaving like idiots because a reveal would fully invalidate the entire story's premise. The gods decide to ultimately destroy the dream due to their own said stupidity. Act 1, killing off Gustav for someone who wasn't even foreshadowed in game and having him be the replacement main character. Oh, and also technically one of the gods, and is concealing information for drama. Even The Last of Us 2 wasn't this bad. This was just too much and too dumb. The list goes on. The problem with the cliche storm is that it invalidates its own need to exist, and the characters who don't suffer from the writer-inflicted stupidity are nuked off the planet anyway in the good ending. It may as well be Chronicle X's space retcon ending. Where's the charm? Seriously, Act 1 was so good, but after the fact Gustav dies, who is the glue to everyone, it falls off hard. The characters are okay, but nothing to keep interest. Lune is a typical science sergeant. She's boring, she's about the mission, but she shares nothing of interest enough for me to care. She's pretty bland throughout. Ciel is pretty good. The best out of the supporting cast. She makes jokes, she has intelligence, she has a passive sorrow and fun. Her weaponry relates to what she loves or used to love. She bounces off most responses and can lighten and darken the mood. She's a good character that deserved more. Hell, everyone deserved more time to cook, but she's just really great. And her gameplay is probably my favorite in the game. And the pro tag, the redhead. She's the major importance, but she gives me no reason to care besides she's written like a K-drama and speaks on emotion and feelings way too much. She really has nothing interesting to say and has nothing interesting to share. And forward on, she's one of the gods, but she's in pain constantly and blah blah blah. I don't care at this point. You lost me long ago when you didn't write enough to make me care. SK is a fine character. There's not much else. He's got a lot of comedic effect. He's a swell character, and Monoko or whatever is yet another worthless character that ceases to be when the rest of the world does, and is as disposable to the plot as anyone else that's not a painter. And on to our last one, Verso, is mediocre. I didn't mesh with him, I didn't feel sorry for him. Every scene has no emotion to it because he's hiding 1,000 secrets, so every conversation with him feels worthless because he does not show good responses, outside of CL or whatever. Those two bounce back and forth pretty well. But Verso reminds me of Clive from Final Fantasy 16, and that's already enough for me to know I do not like him outside of his fun combat. He's a really bad replacement for Gustav, and it only gets worse once you hit Act 3 with him. I wish they spent more time just talking to each other. None of the characters interact enough to make me care about them, either because the time spent on stopping the paintress. Like, seriously, it's really doesn't fully feel like a real RPG with characters around you and a party system that you care about. There's a big reason Final Fantasy X works so well when we compare Verso to Titus not being real, and it's because Titus was built as a really great character, and not just Titus, Waka, Yuna, Auron, we can go on, but the party was like a family. It made you feel every character had a great story to tell of past and present. Everyone didn't mesh, there were problems within, and it was all pretty fantastic. But this party in Expedition 33, this was just not very good. It felt like there was something with Gustav, but the story went into a direction I did not really like. It reminds me very much of The Last of Us 2 in the way I hated the direction of the story. Expedition 33 does its best to really lift its plot from Final Fantasy X, but does a poor job. Not only is it comparable to Final Fantasy X, it is very much a K-drama, a soap opera, Telemundo-like in general. Just very, very dramatic, similar to Don't Nod's Life is Strange. More so not one, because that was structured pretty well somewhat, but True Colors, or the game Hellblade, but even not so much that, because Hellblade is such a great story. But it does a poor job at trying to mimic these things. There are plenty of well-done emotional dramas that actually have impact. The game isn't one of them. When the entire advertised premise was replaced with self-inflicted stupidity caused by reality warpers, it's like they wanted a Jack Kirby's Eternals concept of gods playing with the world. But if they wanted that, it would have been more interesting to start off with that, instead of shock for shock value. The genre isn't the problem. This specific story is the problem. Andor is a drama, and it takes a giant shit on this story with how it covers grief, loss, and assholes acting beyond the control of the average person. The way Andor handles grief is part of why this story is so glaringly crap in comparison. There are stories that do it well, and they don't fall into the pitfalls of Expedition 33. Final Fantasy X was so great because it had an entire religious conflict, the propaganda, the racism plots, the control of the population through suppression of technology, the fact that the church was run by undead monsters they condemned, the attempted genocide of oppressed people trying to save human sacrifices from said idiotic religion in the game. But to continue on, the reason I speak of this game having too many cliches is because of how the writers chose to execute them. All Just a Dream bullshit has been the best known cliche in all of literary history. This game's plot is a low-level soap opera at best, but has none of the charm of an actually self-aware soap opera. More on the problem towards Act 3, the painters don't treat it like a separate world. They treat it as a plaything and happily go about genociding the inhabitants when it's convenient to them. With the destruction of the painting at the end of the game and everyone in it, a good thing versus saving the painting, sure, you free Verso's soul at the cost of the genocide of every other innocent entity, and there who wasn't part of this family soap opera bullshit. So yes, it is all just a dream because that's how it's treated by the characters in the setting. They all die so 4 morons can move on from their grief. Wow, so deep. The only thing it made me question is the IQ of the writer. No foreshadowing, no setup, having it happen because they explicitly chose to fuck around near the corpse of a monster that already resurrected once before, comes back again, which gets Gustav killed as a result of being snuck up on by another jackass, all to introduce a character who didn't exist prior to that moment. Said character is chummy with the guy who killed Gustav, but hey, we now trust him enough to lead the party for reasons. And look at this brand new relationship system out of fucking thin air. Verso knows, the paintress knows, the curator knows, the sister knows, Malay works it out after they nuke the paintress, so yes, they are concealing information like, we're going to blow this entire world up because 2 of us were brain damaged to attend grief counseling. Rainier, or whatever how you pronounce his name, wanted to kill them. And by Verso joining the mission to kill the paintress, he enabled the curator to nuke the painting as planned. Killing off characters with no lead-in or prompting has been long regarded as a sign of incompetent amateur writing, and is meant to be foreshadowed ahead of its time as a standard rule. That plus the general abject stupidity of the characters in that scene in contrast to how they behaved prior to that makes it pretty clear that it was the author shoehorning in the scene instead of anything organic to the setting. The author is meant to conceal their hand moving characters through the plot, not flip the chessboard because they suck at playing the game. That's how the game treats it by the endings. Either only Verso's feelings matter as the creation of the painting, and everyone is genociding to free him and Alicia, good ending, you know, or only Alicia matters as the last painter standing and forces every other entity to play along while showing the same sort of decay as the paintress proper. Bad ending. The good ending makes clear that the canon ending is fuck that world entirely because only the real world matters. So you say that they are sentient entities with feelings, and I agree, but the writers of the game don't agree with you. That's the problem with the ending in the first place. The writer has made it so that none of the painted entities matter in favor of a soap opera. There is no foreshadowing of Gustav's death in this manner, nor does Verso appear at the prior to Gustav dying. Verso showing up after being chummy with his father or whatever, and then magically being allowed to join the expedition in spite of his clearly shady involvement is contra to how everyone behaves prior to this moment. There is absolutely no foreshadowing leading up to this happening. There's foreshadowing for the paintress not being distilled evil and Nevron's not being her sole creation, but that's thrown under the bus when Gustav, who's investigating the mystery, is replaced by a character who's actively part of the conspiracy and already knows these details. It renders those breadcrumbs irrelevant. I really enjoyed the combat, even if lacking in its overly done just parry and screw any other option style. But the story and characters fell off a cliff, and trust me, this is not based on emotion. I'm assessing this on literary values, not how it makes me feel. When I think of good stories, I think of Psychonauts 1 and 2, Ghost of Tsushima, Yakuza and spin-offs across the board tend to have excellent stories. Witcher 3 had some great moments. Mass Effect, KOTOR, Jade Empire, the first 2 Batman Arkham games. And even the third one, I kind of love Origins the most. Metal Gear Solid 3, Chrono Trigger, which successfully had a twist where they killed the main character. Done right. Final Fantasy 6, 7, 10, and 12, Fallout 1 and 2, and New Vegas, Majora's Mask, etc. And I have to stop here because there's a huge amount of them. The older options have a lot more to choose from generally. Stories don't necessarily need to be high art, but they need to be consistent, and the premise has to make sense at a bare minimum. Expedition 33 didn't even get that right when they threw their initial premise under the bus for a soap opera. The individual cutscenes, dialogue somewhat, voice acting and music are fantastic on their own. It just doesn't come together into something that feels cohesive, and there are some wild tone shifts and even from scene to scene that ruin the more emotional moments. The moment-to-moment writing is good at times, and especially the dialogue feels really human and sincere in a way that many games seem to not even attempt. but unfortunately, the overarching story is a complete mess. Pacing, tone, and thematic structure don't really connect at all. They put some pretty great scenes by putting them in a really weird order with a tonally dissonant gameplay in between. Overall, I give this game a solid 7.5 for actually trying something new and for the clear amount of love put into it. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and it feels like they're trying to innovate too much all at once.